Hello, and welcome to this introduction to the Saamic languages. In this presentation, I'll briefly say a few words about the Uralic languages and then to go on to the Saamic languages in more detail. If you look at this map of the largest language families of the world, you'll see that the Uralic languages are spoken in the north of Eurasia, so the northern part of Europe and in the northern part of Western Russia, as well as in Central Europe. If we look at the Uralic language family, then we see that there's a number of subgroups. We have the Saamic languages, the Finnic ones, the Mordvin languages, Mari, the Permic languages, Mansin Khanty and Samoyedic in Siberia, and then Hungarian in Central Europe. So in a global perspective, the Uralic language family is relatively small. It has about 40 members. And in comparison to the big language families like Sino-Tibetan, Indo-European or Bantu, it's a relatively small number. But it's still relatively high if we look at all the language families of the world, because there's many language families which have only one or two members. Also, the Uralic language family is spoken by a relatively small total population, maybe about 21 million people or so, in comparison to the big language families like Indo-European with English and Spanish and Russian, or Sino-Tibetan with Chinese. But it's still at number 13 of this list of all the language families of the world, because again, many of those smaller language families have very few languages and very few native speakers. And as I said, the Uralic language family is spoken over a relatively wide area, mostly in the northernmost parts of Europe and Western Siberia. The three biggest languages, Hungarian, Finnish and Estonian, they're spoken mostly in Hungary, Finland and Estonia, but most of the other Uralic languages are spoken as minority languages in Russia and Scandinavia. The mean number of speakers, so the average is about 620,000, but that's a number that is skewed by the very large number of speakers of Hungarian. So the median number is perhaps more informative, and that's about 1,000. And most Uralic languages are endangered. If we look at a genealogical classification, this is the traditional one, then there was a split in Proto-Uralic, which turned it then into Proto-Finno-Ugric and Samoyedic. And here we see that the Saamic languages are all the way at the left after a number of splits. There's also a newer classification where Uralic would have then split into Finno-Permic and Ugro-Samoyed. And there, in that classification, Saamic is a bit closer to Mordvin. But which one is correct, that's something on which there's no agreement on as yet. If we look at the numbers of speakers, then, as I said, Hungarian is at the top with about 14 million, then comes Finnish with more than 5 million, Estonian with about 1 million, so the state languages, but then all the smaller ones, the minority languages, they have speaker numbers ranging from about 360,000 for Medo-Mari to numbers which are very low, below 10 for a number of languages such as Saami and Vote. There's also still a political classification which is possible, where you look at the status of the languages. So Hungarian has national language status in Hungary, so does Finnish in Finland and Estonian in Estonia. But the other languages, they are minority languages, so the Saamic and Finnic languages to some extent in Scandinavia, most of the other ones in Russia at various levels, and then Hungarian in the countries that surround Hungary.